You already know the feeling. You send a message, it's read, and then nothing. No emoji, no haha, no miss you too, just silence. And in that silence, your brain does the thing it always does. It starts telling you a story. They've moved on. They're fine. They're probably not even thinking about me. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second, because it's going to change how you see the next 20 minutes of your life. That story is almost never true. Not because I'm trying to give you false hope. I'm not in the business of telling women what they want to hear. You know that about me by now. I'm telling you this because of what I actually see over and over again when I work with avoidant men and women, and when I read the research on how the avoidant mind actually functions when nobody's watching. The avoidant partner in your life is not fine. They are not unaffected. What they are doing, and this is the part almost nobody talks about, is replaying you. Quietly, privately, in moments you will never see. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that replaying looks like. Not vague reassurance, specifics. The kinds of memories that surface, the moments that get replayed on a loop, and, just as important, why none of that guarantees they'll act on it. Because I'm not going to sell you a fairy tale. I'm going to give you the truth. And then I'm going to tell you what to actually do with it. Let's get into it. Before I tell you what an avoidant replays, I need you to understand why they replay anything at all. Because if you skip this part, you'll misread everything that follows. Avoidant attachment isn't a personality trait. It's not coldness as a character flaw. It is a nervous system strategy that got built, usually in childhood, around one core belief. Closeness is dangerous. Not consciously. Nobody walks around thinking intimacy will destroy me. It's much quieter than that. It's a felt sense, wired in early, that says, if I let someone fully in, I will lose myself, or I will be hurt, or I will be trapped. So the avoidant nervous system develops a brilliant, if painful, solution. It lets people close enough to feel connection because the need for connection never actually goes away, no matter how independent someone claims to be. And then, right at the point where the connection starts to feel real, it pulls the emergency brake. This is what we call deactivation. It's not a decision, it's closer to a reflex. The same way your hand pulls back from a hot stove before your brain even finishes processing, that's hot, an avoidant's whole system pulls back from vulnerability before they've consciously registered why. Here's the part that matters for you. Deactivation is not the same as deletion. When an avoidant pulls away from you, they are not erasing you from their internal world. They're suppressing you. And suppression, psychologically, is exhausting and unstable. Things you actively try not to think about have a way of resurfacing exactly when your guard is down, which for most people is when they're alone. That's the mechanism. Now let's talk about what actually comes up. If you've ever wondered, do they think about me at all? The honest answer, based on both attachment research and what I hear directly from avoidant clients, is yes, but selectively, and not in the way you'd hope. Avoidants don't typically replay the relationship as a whole. They don't sit there narrating our story the way an anxious partner might. What replays instead are fragments, specific, sensory, often small moments that snuck past their defenses because they weren't obviously romantic enough to trigger the alarm bells. Let me give you the 4 categories I see most often. The first is the moment you weren't trying. Not the grand gesture, not the vacation photo. It's you laughing at something stupid, mid-sentence, unfiltered. It's the specific way you said one ordinary phrase. Avoidants are hyper alert to performance, to feeling like they're being managed or pursued. So the moments that actually land and stick are the ones where you clearly weren't performing for them at all. Ironically, the less you were trying to be impressive, the more likely that moment is still living in their head. The second is the moment they felt safe enough to be honest. This is the big one, and it's counterintuitive. Avoidants replay the rare instances where they let their guard down, not where you did. A conversation where they admitted something they don't usually admit. A night where they weren't performing the "I'm fine, I don't need much" role. Those moments feel dangerous to an avoidant in the present tense because vulnerability is exactly what their system is built to avoid. But in memory, once the danger has passed, those same moments often become the ones they return to most because for a brief window, they weren't managing anything. They were just there. The third is any moment of being chosen without conditions. Avoidance, more than almost any other attachment style, carry a quiet expectation that closeness comes with a bill, that eventually there'll be too much or not enough, or that the other person's warmth has an expiration date tied to performance. So when you extended affection, patience, or acceptance in a moment where they expected to be met with frustration instead, that moment tends to lodge itself deep. Not because it was dramatic, because it violated their expectation. The fourth is the specific instant they realized you were pulling back. This is the one people don't expect, and it's important, so listen closely. Avoidants often don't fully register how much they value someone until the dynamic shifts, until you start deactivating instead of them. The moment they sensed your warmth cooling, your effort dropping, your attention going elsewhere, that instant tends to imprint hard. Not because absence makes the heart grow fonder in some poetic sense, but because it's the first moment the relationship stopped being something automatically available, and their nervous system, the one that avoids things until it might lose them, suddenly has new information to process. Notice what's common across all four. None of these are the big, showy moments most of us assume matter most. They're small, specific, sensory. That's the nature of what actually gets past an avoidance defenses. The subtle stuff sneaks in. The obvious stuff gets filtered out before it lands. I titled this video, When They're Alone, very deliberately, and I want to explain why that detail matters so much. An avoidance defenses are almost entirely relational. They activate in the presence of closeness, a text that feels like too much, a conversation that's getting too honest, a partner who wants what are we clarity. The suppression system exists to manage external pressure toward intimacy. But alone, there's no external pressure. There's no one to deactivate against. And that's precisely when the suppressed material has room to surface, not because they've dropped their guard on purpose, but because the guard was never really against the memory itself. It was against the demand the memory implied. Quiet, unprompted, late at night, driving, in the shower, lying in bed. These are the low stimulation moments where intrusive, unbidden thoughts tend to appear for anyone, and an avoidant is no exception. If anything, because they've spent more energy suppressing during the day, the rebound in stillness can be stronger. This is backed by something pretty well established in psychology generally, not just attachment theory. It's related to what's sometimes called the rebound effect of thought suppression. The classic finding is that trying hard not to think about something tends to make it surface more, not less, once the effort relaxes. Avoidants are, in a sense, running this experiment on themselves constantly. Suppress all day, rebound at night. So when you imagine them moving on effortlessly, what's actually more consistent with the psychology is something messier. Effortful suppression during the day, followed by intrusive resurfacing when they're finally still. Now, I need to pull the emergency brake here myself because I can already feel where some of you are taking this, and I have to stop you before you go there. This does not mean they're going to come back. It does not mean the replaying will turn into a message, a call, a grand return. Replaying is not the same as resolving. An avoidant can replay a memory of you with genuine warmth at 1 a.m. and still wake up the next morning and go right back to distance, because the replay doesn't change the underlying belief that closeness is dangerous. It just proves the feeling was real. It says nothing about whether they've done the work to change what they do with that feeling. This is the distinction I want you to actually take away from this video more than any of the specific memory categories I described. Being thought about is not the same as being chosen. An avoidant can miss you in the quiet and still choose distance in the daylight because those two things are run by completely different systems. The emotional memory system, which doesn't require effort, and the behavioral change system, which requires enormous, deliberate effort that most avoidants never do because nobody's forced them to. So if you're watching this hoping it's permission to sit and wait, expecting the replay to eventually convert into a reunion, I love you too much to let you do that to yourself. I want you to have this information because understanding someone accurately protects you from two dangerous extremes. Assuming they never cared at all, which can make you doubt your own reality, and assuming that because they cared, they'll inevitably act on it, which can keep you stuck waiting for a text that might never come. Let's go one layer deeper, because I think this is the part that actually helps you heal, not just understand. If the memory is genuinely there, if the warmth is real, why don't more avoidants act on it? Why doesn't the late night replay turn into the next morning message? A few reasons, and they're worth knowing because they'll stop you from taking this personally. First, shame gets in the way. Many avoidants, once they've pulled back, feel a quiet embarrassment about having pulled back at all, especially if, deep down, they know the withdrawal wasn't really about you. Reaching back out means confronting that, and confrontation of any kind, even internal, is exactly what their system is built to avoid. Second, the memory competes with a stronger, older belief that reopening the door will eventually lead to the same trapped, overwhelmed feeling that made them pull back in the first place. Even a genuinely warm memory isn't strong enough on its own to override a belief that's been reinforced since childhood. Third, and this one is important, avoidants often assume the window has already closed. They imagine you've moved on, that reaching out would be unwelcome or embarrassing, that too much time has passed. Ironically, they're often making the same mistaken assumption about you that you're making about them. They're probably fine without me. None of this is a reflection of your worth. I want to say that plainly. The fact that someone's nervous system is built around avoiding vulnerability is not a referendum on how lovable you are. It's a pattern that predates you, and in most cases, it will outlast whatever brief window you were both in together, unless they specifically decide to do the work of changing it. So here's where I bring this home, because information without action is just a more sophisticated way to stay stuck. 1. Stop auditioning for a callback. If you've been replaying your side of the story too, wondering what you could have done differently, drafting messages you never send, checking if they viewed your story, I want you to notice that you are trying to influence a system that responds to pressure by pulling back further. The more available and pursuing you are, the less room there is for their own system to miss you in the quiet ways I just described. Distance, real distance, is often what allows an avoidant's own replay mechanism to do its work. Chasing interrupts it. 2. Let the replay exist without needing it to be reported back to you. You may never get confirmation that they thought about you. You may never hear, "I couldn't stop thinking about the way you laughed that one night." That confirmation isn't owed to you, and waiting for it keeps your healing hostage to someone else's silence. What I want for you is to be able to hold the truth, "They probably do think about me sometimes," without needing it delivered to your phone to feel settled. 3. Use this understanding to rebuild your own sense of reality, not to build a case for waiting. A lot of women in this exact situation start to doubt their own perception. Did they even care? Was any of it real? The information in this video exists to answer that question honestly. Yes, it was very likely real, in the way avoidant intimacy tends to be real. And then to close the door on the follow-up question, which is, so what do I do now? Wait? No, you take the truth that it was real, and you let that be enough closure to stop interrogating the past without turning it into a reason to keep the present on hold. 4. Watch behavior, not memory. If an avoidant partner does come back around, and sometimes they do, the test isn't whether they say they thought about you. It's whether their behavior has actually changed. Do they tolerate closeness differently now? Do they communicate instead of disappearing? Do they take responsibility instead of getting defensive? A warm memory is not evidence of growth. Consistent, different behavior over time is the only evidence that matters. I want to speak directly to something a lot of you carry into these dynamics because I think it's the real wound underneath the question, do they think about me? If you've been in a relationship or situationship with an avoidant partner, at some point you were probably made to feel like your needs were the problem, like wanting consistency, wanting reassurance, wanting to know where you stood, like that made you needy or intense or a lot. I want to be very clear with you. Needing connection is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you. In an avoidant dynamic, the healthy, ordinary desire for closeness gets pathologized because it's mismatched with a partner whose system treats closeness as threat. That mismatch is not proof that your needs were unreasonable. It's proof that the fit in that moment with that person wasn't right, which is an entirely different conclusion. Knowing that they replay you doesn't undo that wound, but I hope it does something quieter and maybe more useful. It lets you stop rewriting your own memory of the relationship as something that was only ever one-sided. It wasn't one-sided. It was uneven and inconsistent and often painful, but it was not imagined. You can hold that truth with clear eyes and still choose, with just as much clarity, not to wait around for consistency that may never come. So here's what I want you to leave with today. Yes, the avoidant person in your life very likely does replay you. Not the grand moments, the small, unguarded ones. The ones where you weren't performing, where they weren't performing, where something honest slipped through before the defenses came back up. And know that replay is not a promise. It's not a guarantee they'll come back or reach out or change. It's simply proof that what happened between you was real on both sides, even if only one of you has been able to act on it consistently. Your job isn't to wait for that memory to turn into a message. Your job is to take the peace that comes from knowing it was real and use it to close a chapter with clarity instead of confusion, so that whatever comes next in your life, you're not waiting by the phone for someone else's nervous system to finally catch up to yours. If this helped you see your situation more clearly, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want the next step where I walk you through exactly how to respond if an avoidant partner does try to come back, I've got a video linked right here that goes deep into that. I'll see you in the next one.